morning all, my name is B. Santhosh Kumar, Assistant Professor, Institute of Aeronautical Engineering. My subject is image processing. Today I am discussing about basics of full color image processing. So what are the color image processing? What are the full color image processings? We'll discuss now. Full color image processing approaches fall into two major categories. First one, approaches that process each component image individually and then form a composite processed color image from the individually processed components. And another one is approaches that work with color pixels directly. In full color images, color pixels really are vectors. For example, in the RGB system, each color pixel can be expressed as like this. So here the color image processing approaches are two approaches are there. So two approaches are there. The approaches that process each component image individually and then form a composite processed color image from the individually processed components. It is first approach. And the second one, the approach that work with color pixels directly. So directly it will access to the image. So a full color image, color pixels really are vectors. But for example, I am taking RGB, red, green and blue. Each color pixel can be expressed as C of x, y equal to CR of x, y, CG of x, y, CB of x, y. So it is the color image of red, color image of green, color image of blue with respect to the R of x, y, G of x, y, B of x, y. So the color image of red, green, blue with respect to the image pixels R of x, y and G of x, y and B of x, y. So it is about the pixels. It is about the color. So for an image of size m into n, there are mn such vectors C of x, y for x equal to 0, 1, so on, but up to m minus 1. But here y equal to 0, 1, 2, so on n minus 1. It is a m into n size of an image. So here one example, that is a neighborhood averaging the spatial mask for grayscale and RGB color images. So here it is a spatial mask and it is the spatial mask with color image processing. So it is about grayscale. So when I am taking this one, it is a figure A, it is about the grayscale. When it is converting to the color, it is about red, green and blue. So spatial mask for grayscale and RGB color images. So input is a grayscale and output we have converted to the color image processing. That is S, Y, X, Y. That is a spatial mask. And what is the formulation for the full color image? It is a model color transformation G of x, y equal to capital T of f of x, y. Pixel values here are triples or quarters. Analog to section gray level, we know consider SI equal to TA of R1, R2, so on Rn, I equal to 1, 2, so on N. So how we are formulating the color image with respect to the red, green, blue. So G of x, y equal to capital T of f of x, y. The pixel values here are triples the quarters. So the analog to section of gray level we consider. In the previous, it is already, we know that it is a grayscale. We are converting to the color. So here also the analog means the grayscales are converting to the color. How we are converting? Here G of x, y equal to capital T of f of x, y. It is a grayscale image or gray color converting to the color. So what is the equation means? SI equal to TA of R1, R2, so on Rn, I equal to 1, 2, so on N. These are some examples. These are some examples. It is about hues and segments and color image processing. So different colors. What we have to choose? These are the cyan. So different colors with different sizes. It is about the color image. These are the gray images. Some operations are better suited to specific models, but the cost of converting between representations has to be considered as well. Examples as follows. Suppose that we wish to modify the intensity of the image using g of x comma y equal to k into f of x comma y, where 0 less than k less than 1. But here HSA color space equal to S1 equal to R1, S2 equal to R2, S3 equal to K into R3. RGB color space equal to SI into K into RI, I equal to 1, 2, 3. And the CMY color is a SI of K into RI equal to 1 minus K, I equal to 1, 2, 3. But here some operations are better suited to specific models, but the cost of converting between representations has to be considered as well. But what are the examples as follows? We wish to modify the intensity of the image. How we are changing the intensity from color to gray or gray to color. G of x comma y equal to k into f of x comma y. Here k is nothing but a 0 less than k and less than 1. Although the HSI transformation involves the fewest number of operations, the computations required to convert in RGB or CMY image to HSI space more than offset of advantages of the simple transformation. It is, I am taking some, it is figure A and is it about figure B. So here figure A is a RGB and CMY and hue and transformation. So the original image with respect to the RGB or CMY, we are converting to the hue or with respect to the transformation technique. So it is about color image processing with respect to the transformation technique. So the HSA transformation involves the fewest number of operations. The computations required to convert an RGB or CMY image to the HSA space more than of offset to the advantages of simpler transformation. So there are majorly two categories are there. First one, the process each component image individually and form composite processed color image from the individual processed components. And the second one is a work with the color pixels directly. The color pixels really are vectors. Okay. So what are the two categories? First one is a process each component image individually and form composite processed color image from the individual processed component. And the second one is a work with the color pixels directly, and color pixels are real or vectors. So the two major categories of the full image processing approaches are peer color components processing, that means process each component image individually to form a composite process color image. Another is a vector based processing, that means work with the color pixels as a vector directly. To make results of two approaches equivalent, the image processing method has to be applicable to both vectors and scalars. The operation on each component of a vector must be independent of the other components. So two major categories. First one is a peer color component processing. The process each component image individually to form a composite processed color image. Another is a vector based processing. The work with the color pixels as a vector directly. To make results of two approaches equivalent, the image processing method has to be applicable to both vectors and scalars. The operation on each component of a vector must be independent of the other components. So these are about the references. And so full color image processing approach as a fall into two major categories. Already we discussed what are the two approaches. First approach that process each component image individually and then form a composite processed color image from the individually processed components. Approaches that work with color pixel directly in full color image or color pixels really are vectors. But example I am taking here RGB system. Each color pixel each can be expressed as a C of x comma y equal to CR of x comma y, CG of x comma y and CB of x comma y. Here R is nothing but a red, green and it is a blue. So R of x comma y, G of x comma y, B of x comma y. For an image of m into n, there are mn such vectors. C of x comma y for x equal to 0 to 1, so on m minus 1, y equal to 0, 1 to so on n minus 1. It is about the equation of color image to the gray level. So it is about the neighboring average is there. The spatial mask of the grayscale is converting to the color image, that is a RGB color image. It is a formulation. The model color transformation with g of x comma y equal to capital T of f of x comma y. The pixel values are triples or quarters. So analog means input signal is converting to the analog is a gray level, that is the input image. Si equal to Ti of R1 R2 so on Rn, I equal to 1 to so on n. So it is about the color image with different gray levels with the transformation techniques, that is the intensities and hue level and different colors or with the grayscales. Some operations are better suited to specific models, but the cost of converting between representations has to be considered as well. Example as follows. Suppose that we wish to modify the intensity of the image is using with g of x comma y. The intensity how we are changing means input is a color image with the transformation technique of k with the input image of grayscale, that is k into f of x comma y, where 0 is less than k less than 1. That is a HSA color space and RGB and CMY. Here one example of color image with the transformation technique. First image is a RGB and CMY and hues HS and transformation technique T. So figure A is a color image processing, figure B is a transformation technique converting to the RGB into CMY or HSA. So how we are categorizing this full color image processing means, first one is a process each component image individually and form composite processed color image from the individual processed components. Another one is a work with the color pixels directly. The color pixels are really or vectors. What are the two major categories of full color image processing approaches? Peer color component processing, that means process each component image individually to form a composite process of color image. Vector based processing means the work with the color pixels directly. To make results of two approaches equivalent, the image processing method has to be applicable to both vectors and scalars. The operation on each component of a vector must be independent of the other component. So it is about the basic color image processing. Okay, thank you. Good morning all. My name is B. Santhosh Kumar, Assistant Professor, Institute of Aeronautical Engineering. My topic is color transformation. So what is color transformation? It is useful to think of a color image as a vector valued image where each pixel has associated with it as vector of 3 values. Each component of this vector corresponding to a different aspect of color depending on the color model being used. For example, in an RGB model, the 3 values in the vector respectively denote the red, green and blue components of the color of the pixels. And an HSA model has the 3 values in the vector denote the hue, saturation and intensity of the color of that pixel. So it is useful. When it is useful that the color image is a vector valued image where each pixel has associated with it as vector of 3 values. So what are the 3 values? Each component of this vector corresponding to a different aspects of color depending on the color model being used. For example, in an RGB model, the 3 values in the vector respectively denote the red, green and blue components of the color of that pixel. An HSA model, the 3 values in that vector denote the hue, saturation and intensity of the color of the pixel. So there are 3 are there. So these are the major things for color transformation technique. We can think of color transformation as a transformation of vectors Si equal to Ti of R1, R2, R3 is equal to I equal to 1, 2, 3. Here R1, R2, R3 represents the color components of the input image, that is f of m, n. Whereas S1, S2, S3 represents the color components of the output image g of m, n. In theory, the color transformation can be performed in any color space model. So, however, in practice, some transformations are better suited to specific models. And moreover, the cost of conversion between the models must be a factor in implementation of a particular transformation. So, how can we think about the color transformation of a vector? That is Si equal to Ti of R1, R2, R3 is equal to I equal to 1, 2, 3. Here R1, R2, R3 represents the color components of the input image f of m comma n, whereas S1, S2, S3 represents the color components of the output image g of m comma n. But in a theory, color transformation can be performed in any color space model. However, in practice, some transformations are better suited to specific models. But the cost of conversion between the models must be a factor of implementation a particular transformation. So it is one example of color histogram equalization. Here I am taking input is a RGB model. RGB means we know that red, green, blue. So input is a RGB. Here we are converting to the RGB to HSV. So it is the about RGB to HSV. It is line of FH of m comma n. It is the FS of m comma n. What is happening here means HSV is converting to the RGB. So it is the output is a RGB image. Input is RGB, output is RGB. It is f of m comma n, g of m comma n. So but what is happening? Input is f of m comma n, output is g of n comma n. So input is converting to the output. But meanwhile, what is happened means here histogram is applied. Here histogram is applied to this one. So it is about the histogram. That is the fv of m comma n. So input is a input of RGB image. Output is also an RGB image. So meanwhile, what is happening means histogram is applied to that in between the input to the output. It is example of color histogram equalization. It is I'm taking one example, original image with histogram equalization. So what is the original image? So original image with RGB color. Histogram equalization means HSV or RYB color. So it is the input image with original image and output is a histogram equalization. So it is about the one example of color transformation. Which one is better means second one is a most brightness. Why? Because I am using transformation technique to increasing the brightness of the input image. But input is somewhat dull due to some noise. But output is we are converting to the brightness. So we are converted to the brightness. How means we are converting to the input to the output with using the histogram equalization. Here another example of histogram equalization followed by saturation adjustment in the HSI color space. So how we are using histogram means we are transformation technique applied. Transformation technique is applied, that is a saturation. So here it is a figure A, it is about figure B, it is about figure C. So hue, saturation and intensity. So hue, saturation and intensity, three things were applied here. So it is about a figure A, it is about figure B and it is about figure C. So in the three figures A are applied hue, so this figure histogram before the processing of a median, histogram after processing of a median. So before processing of median it is 0.36, after processing of this one it is converting to the 0.5. It is about the color transformation with applying the hue, saturation and intensity. It is about the histogram process of the color transformation. Although the fewest operations are involved in the HI space. So So the color transformations is converting to the three types: hue, saturation, and intensity. So these about the histogram. The histogram will maintain these three things in the color transformation. But here the fewest operations are involved in the HSI space. The computations involved in conversion back and form on the RGB space more than offsets any savings in computation in HSI space. This is analog to grayscale navigations, but as a grayscale case, the transformation is useful in enhancing in detail embedded in the dark portion of color image. So the complementation can be easily implemented in the RGB space, but however, there is no simple equivalent of this in this HSI space, and approximation is possible. So when the fewest operations are involved in the HSI space, the computations involved in conversation back and forth from RGB space more than offsets any savings in computation in HSI space. This is analog to grayscale navigations. As in the grayscale, this transformation is useful in enhancing in detail the embedded in dark portion of a color image. So the complementation can be easily implemented in the RGB space. However, there is no simple equivalent of this in the HIS space, and approximation is possible. So consider a simple transformation involving intensity scaling g of m comma n equal to k into f of m comma n, where 0 is less than k, less than 1 is a scaling factor. In HI space, this can be implemented as S1 equal to R1, H2 equal to R2, and S3 equal to k into R3. But here it is about the HSI. It is first thing. And the second one is the RGB. So S1 equal to k into R1, S2 equal to k into R2, and S3 equal to k into R3. Here CMY is a third one. S1 equal to k into R1 plus 1 minus k, S2 equal to k into R2 plus 1 minus k, and S3 equal to kr plus 1 minus 3. So these are the transformations of involving the intensity scaling g of m comma n equal to k into f of m comma n. So S1 equal to R1, S2 equal to R3, S3 equal to k into R3. It is about one equation of HSI. Another one is a second one is a RGB. Third one is a CMY. So the color transformations process the components of a color image within the context of a single color model. The formulation is simple to the gray level transformation g of x comma y equal to capital T of f of x comma y. So the color transformation is converted to the grayscale, or grayscale is converting to the color image. So g of x comma y is a output and f of x comma y is the input, and T is the transformation technique. So f of x comma y equal to capital T of f of x comma y. F of x comma y here is a color input image. G of x comma y is a transformation or processed of the color output image. But the pixel values are triplets: RGB, CMY, and HSI. RGB, CMY, and HSI. So we are taking 3-1. Here are HSI, RGB, and CMY like this. Here also I am taking 3 things. So SI equal to TI of R1, R2, so on Rn, and I equal to 1 to so on K. N is a number of pixels. Ri equal to color component of f of x, y at point x, y, and Si is a color component of g of x, y at point x, y. It is about the output. So n number of color components, n equal to 3 for RGB, HSI equal to n equal to 4 for CMYK. Here T1, T2, so on Tn. A set of n transformations or color mapping functions perform R into Si. So how many are there? Means Si equal to Ta. Si equal to Ta. But here Si equal to output, Ta is the input function. Number of colors are capital N equal to 3 is for RGB, HSI equal to n equal to 4, and CMYK. So like this. So it is one example of CMYK component of a full color image. Here I am taking 0 equal to black, Right. So it is a figure A, that is a cyan, figure B magenta, figure B is a yellow, and figure D is the black image. So the strawberries are composite of a large amount of magenta and yellow. Here I am taking CMY and RGB, HSI. So it is the full color image, that is the input image, full color image. So cyan image, magenta image, yellow image, and black image. So one input is converted into the different color shadings where divided. And here RGB component of a full color image. Here also taking 0 equal to black, white. So here also input image, red image, green, and blue images are converted. It is about the HSI component of input image, hue, saturation, and intensity. These three things we are converted into the HSI, RGB, HSI, RGB, and CMYK. So these three types we are converted into these three. So every image we need a hue, saturation, and intensity converted into the HSI, RGB, and CMYK. It is about the transformation of the color image. So the color transformation is example to modifying the intensity of the strawberry image. One example. So the transformation performed in HSI color space. T1 tends to S7 equal to R1, that is a hue, and T2 equal to S2 to R2, that is a saturation. T3 equal to S3 into K into R3, 0 less than K less than 1. It is about the intensity. So three things we are taking. So these have to convert it to the RGB, CMY, and HSI. So RGB is the Ti equal to Si into K into Ri, I equal to 1 to 3 RGB, and CMY is a T1, Si equal to K into Ri plus 1 minus K, I equal to 1 to 3, so on CMY. So it is decreasing the intensity of the left image. So decreasing intensity. So RGB, CMY, HSI, and intensity. So these things we are taking as a graphically. It is about the RGB and CMY and HSI and intensity values. So four things were applied. Input is input image, that is a color image processing, color image with low intensity. In color, it is about the color transformation to decreasing the intensity of left image by 30%. So it is useful to think of a color image as a vector valued image where each pixel has a associated with it. As vector of three values, each component of this vector corresponds to a different aspect of color depending on the color model being used. For example, in RGB model, the three values of the vectors respectively denote the red, green, and blue, that is RGB of the color pixel. In HSI model, the three values in the vector denote the hue, saturation, and intensity. Hue, saturation, and intensity. So the usual of a think of color image as a vector values of the image, the each pixel with associated with the vector of the three values, each component of the vector corresponding to a different aspects of color, that is depending on the color model of being used. In example RGB model, the three values of the vector respective denoting the red, green, and blue components of the color. But in a HSA model, the three values of the vectors denote the hue, saturation, and intensity of the color pixels. It is about the color transformation. And what is the formula for color transformation? It is the transformation of vector Si equal to TIF R1, R2, R3, so on. But here I equal to 1, 2, 3. Here what is R1, R2, R3? Here R1, R2 represents the color component of the input image. Whereas S1, S2, S3 represents the color components of the output image. Input image is nothing but a f of x comma y. Output image is nothing but a g of x comma y. So here g of x comma y equal to transformation technique of f of x comma y. So it is a transformation technique. So output equal to transformation technique with input image. So R1, R2, R3 is a color component of input, S1, S2, S3 is the color component of the output image. But here we are considering the simple transformation involving in the intensity scaling g of m comma n equal to k into f of m comma n. Here 0 is less than k and less than 1. S1 equal to R1, S2 equal to R2, S3 equal to R3. When it is in HSI. When it is going to the RGB, S1 equal to k into R1, S2 equal to k into R3, S3 equal to k into R3. It is about RGB. And CMY, S1 equal to k into R1 plus 1 minus k, S2 equal to k into R2 plus 1 minus k, S3 equal to k into R plus 1 minus k3. It is about the HSI, RGB and CMY. Color transformation. These are the about the references. So color transformations are useful to think of color image as a vector valued image where each pixel is associated with its vector of three colors. So saturation, hue and intensity, these are the major three things for the color transformation with RGB, CMY and HSI. RGB model, hue, saturation and intensity of the color of the pixels. So SI equal to TIF R1, R2, R3. It is the output. It is a transformation technique and these are the input values. R1, R2, R3 are the input pixels f of x comma y. S1, S2, output pixels, that is g of x comma y. So where the theory in color transformation can perform in the color space model, the practice some transformations better suited to specific models. However, the cost of the conversion between the models must be factor of implementation of particular transformation. So RGB input is a RGB with f of m comma n, output is a g of m comma n. It is RGB and it is RGB. But what is happening means you have applied the histogram. With RGB, CMY and HSI. It is the color original image, figure A, and it is the figure B, output image with the histogram equalization. It is about the hue, saturation and intensity values of three different figures. And the color transformation is a three types: hue, saturation and intensity. These are called histogram. And the fewest operations involved in HSS space computations involved in conversion of back of the fourth form RGB space more than offsets of any savings in computation in HS space. But that is the analog to grayscale navigates. In the grayscale scale, the transformation is useful in enhancing the detail. The embedded in dark portion of a color image, the complementation can be easily implemented in the RGB space. There is no simple equivalent of this HIS or HSI space. The approximation is possible like this: G of m comma n equal to K of f of m, output equal to input, K is the transformation. So it is the equation of SHSI, RGB and CML. So the color transformations are like this: G of x comma y equal to capital T of f of x comma y. Here Si equal to Ti of R1 R2 so on Rn, and I equal to 1 to so on Kn. F of x comma y belongs to the x comma y, that is the Ra color, and the Si color image is a G of x comma y, that is the x comma y. N are the number of color components, n equal to 3 RGB, n equal to 4 for HSI and CMYK. T1, T2 so on Tn are the transformations of color mapping. Okay, it is one example of full color image with CMYK. It is full color of RGB, and it is about the full color image processing of HSI. RGB, HSI and CMYK. So 3 of color transformations with histogram we discuss it here. Hue, saturation, intensity belongs to the HSI, RGB and CMYK. It is a hue equation, saturation and intensity with RGB, CMY and HSI. It is the decreasing of intensity values by 30%, and it is useful to think of a color image as a vector valued image where each pixel has associated with it as vector of 3 values: RGB, hue, saturation and color. And it is the equation for Si equal to T of R1 R2 R3. R1 R2 R3 are the input function of f of m comma 1. S1 S2 S3 are the output of function of g of m comma n. Here g of m comma n equal to k into f of m comma n, HSI, RGB and CMY. So it is about the color transformation. So in the basic of full color image processing, there are 2 approaches. First approach and second approach. First approach is for the component of image individually we are taking, and the second approach, the work with color pixel directly. So individually we are taking and directly we are taking. So when I am taking the C of x comma y equal to output image, C of x comma y equal to C of CR of x comma y, CG of x comma y, CB of R comma y. So red, green, blue. So of image m into n. Image size is a m into n. So it is a m into n such vector, and the neighboring equal is a figure A. It is a spatial color image of RGB. So what is the formula is that g of x comma y equal to capital T of f of x comma y, and gray level is a Si equal to Ti of R1 R2 so on Rn, I equal to 1 to so on n. So it is about the input image, so grayscale images have different things: cyan, magenta, yellow, black, like this. I'm changing to the different colors. But here some operations are better suited for specific models, but the cost is the better for converting the representations. Here g of x comma y equal to f of x comma y. It is the output equal to k into f of x comma y. That is the input image. And what is the HSI model is a S1 equal to R1, S2 equal to R3, RGB equal to S1 into K into RI, and CMI equal to SI into K into RI into 1 minus K. Here only S1 equal to R1, but here S1 into K into RI, here SI equal to K into RI of 1 minus K. It is about the RGB and HSI, RGB and CMY. First equation, second and third equations. So it is about the RGB, CMY, HSI and image. So what are the two categories? Means process of each component image individually and form composite processed color image from the individual processed component. Work with color image directly with the color pixels really or vectors. So what are the two major categories? Pure color component, vector based processing, and to make the results of two approaches. That is the image processing method has to be applicable to both vectors and scalars. The operation on each component of a vector must be independent of the other components. So these about the color. The two major things are the first one is the peer-to-peer and the second one is the vector based. So in the peer-to-peer, it is a component image individual to form a composite, and vector based means work with the color pixels. So work with color. So peer means processing with image individually. To make results of two approaches, the image method to be of two vectors and scalars. So vector is one thing and scalar is the another thing. The operation of each component of a vector must be independent of the other things. So the process of component of the image individually to form a composite process of color image with individual processed components, and the work with the color boxes directly with the color pixels and the vectors. So it is the RGB, and figure B about the transformation or histogram. So it is the formula of g of x comma y equal to t of f of x comma y, si equal to ti of r1 r2 so on rn, I equal to 1 to so on n. So the neighboring is a spatial image with a color image. So it is the equation of input output image equal to input image with RGB. It is the approaches of two approaches. First approach is individually, second one is a direct approach. Okay, thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.